All right, good morning. This is Jeff Orrock here at the National Weather Service office in Wakefield. This is the Tuesday severe weather flash flooding briefing covering the weather, really focused on the next couple of days, really, and it may be even a little bit into this weekend. But the real threat of severe storms and flooding really runs from today, really all the way through Thursday. And things look like they start to improve a little bit as we get into the weekend, though we are increasing the chances of showers and storms really for Saturday and Sunday, especially in the south. As the front hangs up. So we'll kind of get all through that and kind of get into it. Before we jump into just the weather maps of the future, I'm gonna pull up the current radar so we can kind of see what's going on right now. It's really humid, very, very, very muggy out there, and so this is just kind of an animation here. You saw some showers and storms go through earlier, kind of across the peninsulas and the eastern shore. At the end here, I'm gonna stop at the last frame. You're starting to see some more development here, kind of going on, basically west of I-85. So the models are kind of keying in on this, that this area is going to develop and kind of expand a little bit, maybe as it moves east. Probably not going to be severe. This is not going to be the flood threat. Better flood threat comes in later today, as well as severe weather threat. But this area here is going to probably continue to develop and expand as it moves east across the peninsulas and basically east of I-95, and eventually probably get back over there to the eastern shore. So we'll talk about that. But we've got the showers and storms, some stuff popping out there earlier. We're going to key on some more development more back to the northwest, basically north and west of Richmond later today. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Looking at the satellite, it's kind of a mix of sun and clouds, but you see there's a lot of sunshine. You do see this boundary, kind of where we're seeing those showers and storms developing here across parts of central Virginia and eastern Virginia. But you see a lot of sunshine to the north of that, which is just a mix of sun and clouds, and a lot of sunshine to the south. So we're getting some good heating. We're going to get some good destabilization as the day goes on. And so that should set us up for maybe a round or even multiple rounds of showers and storms really later this afternoon. And it's going to last through tonight and even into Wednesday. It's going to be kind of one big, long, drawn out event that we'll be talking about. But some good heating going on. I'm looking at the weather maps, and I'll just pull over the Weather Prediction Center's website. Basically this afternoon, we basically, with the fronts pushed way to the north, we have this little front that's kind of almost like a weird boundary that's kind of draped across the area, being a good focus for showers and storms later today. And then when you get into later on tonight, again, the pattern really doesn't change much. By the time you get into Wednesday morning, the main front starting to get into parts of West Virginia. We still really have this just boundary. That's that little dashed tan line kind of parked right across the central Virginia. And so that's going to continue to be a focus for some heavy showers and storms, even up into the Maryland Eastern Shore. So that's why you see that little boundary kind of stuck over us and the main front starting to push in from the west. By the time we get into Wednesday evening, the front's really slowly making its way across the mountains, becoming even more of a focus for heavy showers and storms into Wednesday. So the flood threat actually is going to increase on Wednesday. The severe threat's probably best today. And then tomorrow, maybe little bit of a severe threat, but definitely more of a flood threat from heavy rainfall, as that front's going to be really slowly trying to make its way in. By Thursday morning, you see that front it's just made it through central Virginia and it's starting to hang up somewhere over eastern Virginia, along the coast and into North Carolina. How fast that front makes it's a big question mark. Thursday morning, the front could still be stuck closer back towards Williamsburg and maybe just barely east of Richmond. So that front may not come through as fast. And so the slower that front moves, especially late Wednesday and into Thursday morning, the more heavy rain we're going to have. That's going to be a really good focus for just multiple rounds of potentially heavy rain. That's Thursday. The front really slowly makes its way into southeast Virginia and into northeast North Carolina Thursday. You see by Friday morning, 24 hours later, the front hasn't moved a whole lot. It should be out of northeast North Carolina and kind of parked along the Outer Banks, but then there's a little wave of low pressure that's going to try to form along the front. So that's going to keep that risk of showers and storms going into late Thursday night and into Friday, especially over southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina. So we're going to have to watch out for that. That's Friday. For Saturday, notice it doesn't move much. And so we're starting to increase rain chances here for the weekend a little bit, especially in the east and the southeast. So, southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina, we're kind of bumping up the rainfall chances for the weekend. That's Saturday. And again, on Sunday, you still see the front kind of just sitting there parked. It's going to get stuck along the coast, so make things a little bit messy maybe for the weekend. So we'll see how that goes on. So kind of a lot to go through here. The main thing for today, we do have this enhanced risk. We'll dive into that, but they did bring the level 3 enhanced risk a little bit further south, basically to Richmond. I'm down in parts of Accomack County and almost to Farmville. The slight risk for tomorrow for severe weather, the level 1 risk of severe weather continues. That's unchanged. And for Thursday, just expecting maybe some general thunderstorms. No severe storms expected on Thursday, but it could be a few thunderstorms around the area. So for today, that's what we're focusing on right now. There's pretty good confidence that we're going to see these storms continuing to redevelop through the afternoon and into this evening. The highlighted area in orange, again, that's that level 3 risk of severe storms, a primary threat being damaging wind and isolated tornadoes. We still have the level 2 risk really everywhere else. Timing's a little bit tricky. We could start to see some storms developing. We already have some right now, but the stronger storms may start to try to get going about 1. But especially as you push later in the afternoon, I think 3, 4 o'clock, maybe even 5, 6 o'clock, we're going to see the increase in coverage. And notice how we stay till midnight almost. So this round of severe weather could be a little bit later in the evening and later into the overnight. And honestly, thunderstorms, even maybe a severe storm or two, could persist well until the early morning hours there on Wednesday. So we say 1 p.m. to midnight, but it could actually go a little bit past midnight. The storms are going to be moving probably close to 30 miles per hour, kind of generally going to the east or east-northeast. So they're going to be trucking along. The problem we might have is that the storms may continue to redevelop like one behind the other. And so some areas may experience this training of storms that may produce some flash flooding. And that's why we have a localized flooding threat as that stuff gets going. We'll talk about that here a little bit more. I'm kind of outlining the threats for today. You see the area here in the purple in the left image. That's the damaging wind threat. So a pretty good probability there. That's the best place where we could see some damaging wind. But you even see the red areas there. That's the purple is the 45 to almost 60% probability of damaging wind today. But even the red area is about a 30 to 45% probability of damaging winds, and a little bit lower as you get to the south and east. And you know, we'll talk about the timing. I think the storm threat's really going to start up here, kind of in the north, and slowly make its way, south as the evening progresses and overnight progresses. And we'll kind of talk about that. Hail risk, really not expecting any hail issues today. There is a tornado risk. They have increased the area in brown here, so that's a little bit better risk. That's that 5 to almost 10% probability of an isolated tornado. So that has been pushed further south, all the way almost here to Wakefield and to cover Hampton Roads and all of the eastern shore. And the rest of the area is really in this, I'd say, more 2 to 4% risk, a little bit lower risk of tornadoes. So they have bumped up the risk of tornadoes today, especially in the areas in brown. Again, the timing of that's going to be much later today. I'd say more like late afternoon, evening, and could be a little bit into the overnight there as far as that tornado risk is concerned. I'll go ahead and go through the simulated reflectivity here for today. So what I'll kind of show is what may happen. So let me back it up to the current time. You can kind of see how the models are doing a pretty good job trying to develop these scattered showers and storms to the west. And that's actually happening right now. And it kind of expands that a little bit and pushes it further to the east by about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. And some of these storms could be strong, maybe an isolated severe from north of Emporia, up through Williamsburg and then parts of the peninsulas here, and maybe even up into the parts of the eastern shore. But you're seeing this initial development this afternoon. But you also see storms developing back here towards the mountains and another bigger system really back in Kentucky. So you're starting to see those multiple waves that may be starting to set up here that are going to impact us the next couple of days. As the afternoon progresses, that stuff kind of pushes offshore. A lot of folks may not get those storms this afternoon. And as we push into this evening, you see another main line starting to push south. This will be probably sometime as early as 6, maybe as late as about 9 p.m. So this is more like in the evening hours. And this continues to kind of push on south. This is almost here getting into about 10 p.m. and eventually here about midnight. So take it with a grain of salt for the exact timing, but I think you're getting an idea of the flavor of this, that we'll see some showers and storms developing this afternoon ahead of this main line. There might be a little bit of a lull, and then you're going to have this bigger system starting to develop coming in from the northwest really later this evening and into the overnight. And so that's the way it looks like for right now. And I'm going to put this out to the side. That takes us through today. For tomorrow, again, we still have that level 2 risk of severe storms, mainly damaging winds, maybe even an isolated tornado. And the event may never really stop. You may have a line of storms up here during the early morning hours on Wednesday. It may kind of stall out. We may get a break in it because the front kind of slowly stalls out, and then things redevelop again as you get into parts of Wednesday afternoon. So what I'll do is kind of pull this back over again, and now we'll kind of look at what's going to happen potentially on Wednesday. Again, take it with a grain of salt. So I've moved us into let's move us in back to about midnight to 2 a.m. there on Wednesday. So you see that line that's kind of dropping down a little bit, and it kind of hangs up. You get a little bit of a lull maybe, and then eventually it starts to redevelop there in the afternoon. So here we are. Excuse me. This is about, I'd say late morning, early afternoon on Wednesday, tomorrow. Here's that line redeveloping again. It's a little bit further south. I'd say somewhere from around Richmond, maybe south and east. It could be a little bit north of Richmond. It's kind of trying to nail where this redevelopment happens for tomorrow is a little tricky, but it's earlier in the day. This is actually in late morning, and then as the afternoon progresses, it may just be kind of coming and going in waves. Now you see another line developing a little bit to the north. That's the front coming down here. You kind of see it here getting into parts of the northern neck and come moving across Maryland Eastern Shore. This gets us into really tomorrow evening. So now we're at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. And notice how the rain and the waves of showers has been continuing across South Central and Southeast Virginia. So it's going to be a long duration event with waves of heavy rain, maybe off and on potential severe weather. We get this little bit of maybe a little break again, and then you'll notice it's starting to redevelop as you get into Thursday. So this is early morning hours on Thursday, and as we push into Thursday morning, it just keeps redeveloping over Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina, and we'll see how fast the thing pushes south and east. Notice how this model never really gets it totally out of Southeast Virginia and Northeast North Carolina, and this takes us all the way to the 24th in the morning. So definitely going to have that flood potential going to be coming in waves as it goes, through the next couple of days. So again, that got that severe weather threat Wednesday, really for the entire area. Again, that line may kind of fire up somewhere from Salisbury down through Richmond and Farmville in the morning, and then slowly make its way south and east, and maybe intensify as it pushes closer into South Hill, Wakefield, Williamsburg, and the lower part of the Eastern Shore through the afternoon on Wednesday. And again, the flood potential definitely increases on Wednesday. Again, this is just showing you the threats for tomorrow. Widespread damaging wind potentially. We kind of went through that a little bit. Maybe some areas of severe wind, and again, a little bit lower tornado threat, but it's not zero. It's just a little bit lower than today. So we're in that 2 to 4% probability of an isolated tornado. Shifting into the heavy rainfall threat, for today, we have that excessive rainfall threat really everywhere. With the showers going on this afternoon, anybody could pick up a quick, inch or so of rain. And then that main line starts to push in a little bit later this evening and overnight, basically just north of Richmond and up towards the Maryland Eastern Shore. So really anybody could get into some heavy rainfall. The probabilities are less likely across Northeast North Carolina, and probably even Southside Hampton Roads has a little bit lower probability, honestly, of getting the heavy rain. You get into Wednesday, and again, we kind of talked about how that line may start right around Farmville to Richmond up into the Maryland Eastern Shore in the morning. Could be a lot of heavy rain. We actually may have some ongoing flooding by the time we get into Wednesday morning if the rain just persists and waves all night long. And then that system's going to slowly make its way south and east through Wednesday and Wednesday evening, moving into basically the peninsula, Hampton Roads, and eventually Northeast North Carolina. And then the system, again, we talked about how it hangs up over Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina, even into Thursday. And that's where the heavy rain threat continues. So kind of walking this through, I'll show you this. This is what you're looking at here is the 6 hourly highest rainfall total. So I'm kind of showing where the heaviest rainfall is going to be occurring over time. And it's over like a 6-hour time window. So you see 2 o'clock this afternoon. You're not, maybe that's those showers moving across that are currently out there now. You see maybe some higher rainfall amounts, but not a lot, maybe an inch or so. But then as you get through later afternoon and this evening, now you start to see it lighting up. By about 6 o'clock this evening, from the Eastern Shore over here to north of Richmond, maybe just north of Farmville and across northern Virginia, this is where some of the higher rainfall rates may be starting to pick up by about, I'd say, 4 to 6 p.m. And notice how those rates kind of expand. So again, we're looking at where the heaviest rainfall rates will be going on. And so by the time we get into 9 o'clock at night tonight, there's definitely more confidence now from, basically the Maryland Eastern Shore down to north of Richmond and over towards just north of Farmville. This is the area that's going to be lighting up with maybe some heavy rain. And you'll notice how this persists overnight. This is 11 o'clock tonight, midnight. This is 1 a.m. So again, we could be seeing quite a bit of heavy rainfall into the early morning hours across the area, coming a little bit further south, maybe into the Tri-Cities, starting to bleed in, maybe down towards Wallops. But notice how it's still locked into the same area from Maryland Eastern Shore down through Richmond and almost Farmville north. And so as we continue through the overnight hours with this heavy rainfall, it basically continues to sag south. This takes us into about 4 a.m. Tomorrow morning. And as we get into about sometime tomorrow morning, notice how it does decrease. So there may be a little bit of a break in the heavier rainfall between 9 and 10 a.m., still starting to make its way down to parts of the peninsulas here, Middle Peninsula and Williamsburg and in the south side. But you're definitely starting to see a little bit of a downward trend here in some of the real heavy rainfall rates. As you push through Wednesday, you're going to see them start to increase again. Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. So again, it's kind of all over the place. It's a little bit central Virginia, getting into northern Virginia, especially focused in here. I would say, you know, James City County, up towards maybe lower end of Ocean City, and then back here towards Emporia. That's where things may try to lock in tomorrow. It's hard to say. It may be a little bit further north than this, and you can kind of see that's why you're seeing some highlights here for some heavy rainfall, still happening in the northern part of the area. So this is all the way through Wednesday afternoon. It just kind of keeps going. The system kind of keeps reloading. So this takes us into early Thursday morning at 2 a.m. And it just keeps going. Again, it just keeps reloading and it keeps kind of persisting across parts of South Central, Southeast Virginia, and Northeast North Carolina. And this takes us all the way into Thursday afternoon. And notice how we're still getting maybe some rounds of heavy rainfall that are going to persist really through all day Thursday, especially over Southeast Virginia, South Central Virginia, and Northeast North Carolina. So it's going to come in waves. It's going to be kind of a persistent, long duration event. I think we are going to have some folks picking up some pretty heavy rainfall, potentially some flash flooding. This is what it looks like, rainfall totals for today. And so you kind of were highlighting that area, mainly, basically, I'd say Tri-Cities, back towards maybe I'd say north of Williamsburg over to Accomack and then areas north. That's where it's really going to set up later today and really tonight. This is kind of your average rainfall amounts. There definitely could be some higher amounts by tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. of, maybe 2 to 3 inches of rain and some isolated pockets of flash flooding in this area that we've highlighted. Again, a little bit less of a risk, I think, for today and tonight when you get into the Hampton Roads region and Northeast North Carolina. I think that's going to be later on for the risk for them. So we shift into Wednesday. That front's going to be probably stalled somewhere right across central Virginia here, probably on the northern edge of this highlighted ring here. That's probably where things are going to start Wednesday morning around daybreak with a lot of heavy rainfall going on there. And then you saw how it all kind of shifts south and east and really kind of hangs up somewhere here over parts of South Central Virginia, Eastern Virginia, and you kind of see right in here where we're forecasting an average of maybe 2 to 3 inches of rain. And honestly, some folks could be quite a bit more than that. Some people may start getting 4 or 5 inches of rain over the course by the time you get into late Wednesday into Wednesday night, because this rainfall map takes us into really Thursday morning at 8 a.m. So again, it's coming in those waves. You may get a break in the rain for a little bit on Wednesday, and then it comes right back in later in the day, and especially overnight, Wednesday night and early Thursday morning. So that's basically Wednesday. You get into Thursday, and I think it's going to be much more focused in Southeast Virginia and Northeast North Carolina. We did move this little area here where you could see some heavier rainfall a little further north because that front might still be hung up even Thursday morning from like South Hill up to about maybe near Williamsburg, somewhere over Newport News, and getting up here towards parts of, maybe Melfa. And that's where that front is stuck in the morning, and you get some heavy rain there early Thursday morning, and then it shifts south and east during the day. And again, it really almost just barely crawls across Hampton Roads and Northeast North Carolina. So, I mean, again, I think we could be looking at some potentially higher totals than this, maybe getting back into maybe 2, 3, maybe even somebody gets 4 or 5 inches of rain out of this on Thursday, depending on how it plays out. So, We're just going to have to watch how this thing progresses and how much it pushes east. These are kind of like the big picture rainfall totals across the entire region. So these are pretty high numbers. I don't know if everybody's going to get 4 to 6 inches of rain in this area here, but I think we're definitely going to be making a run at 4 to 6 inches of rain in some of these locations. And maybe even here in the areas in the lighter oranges, say 3 to 4. I would not be shocked to see some 4 to 5 inch totals, maybe even a 6 inch total somewhere near Emporia, Franklin, somewhere down in here. It could be a little bit higher, just isolated pockets where we may see some of those higher rainfall amounts. The table here, I'm not going to go through it, but it kind of shows you by city every 6 hours, kind of when your heaviest rainfall accumulations might be occurring. So just kind of gives you an idea there of what time frame some of those rainfall rates may be a little bit higher. Uh, Other than that, I mean, again, we have pretty persistent high rain chances really from late today all the way through Wednesday, coming in waves into Thursday, especially over parts of central and southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina. The high probabilities of heavy rainfall linger through most of day Thursday and even into Friday now, especially for northeast North Carolina and southeast Virginia. You're seeing these high rain chances continuing even into Friday. I think Friday, if we do have any flood issues, it's probably going to be very limited to, I'd say, southeast Virginia, far southeast Virginia, and northeast North Carolina, as well as maybe even the eastern shore. And again, I want to highlight here too how Saturday and Sunday we have increased those rain chances now with the front hanging up along the coast, a wave of low pressure developing along it. So we're really going to have to watch out for continuous rounds of some rainfall, especially in the eastern areas and the southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina, even through the weekend. Maybe things get a little bit better here on Sunday, but we're going to have to watch out for Saturday. So a long duration event here is for us with all this rainfall. Uh, Rip current wise, with the easterly winds starting to pick up, maybe northeast here behind the front, a little bit of a moderate risk here over the northern beaches. The south winds will pick up this afternoon, eventually becoming, I'd say more north and northeast as we get through later tomorrow and into Thursday. So moderate risk there. Right now, low risk down south, and we'll see if that changes with the changing wind directions here as the front pushes through later on Thursday. Uh, as far as tropical storm Beryl, I'm not going to get into that. It's staying well to the south. It's forecast to kind of move across the Gulf Coast. It's not bringing us any weather. All the weather we're having right now is really driven by the upper levels of the atmosphere and what's going on with the cold fronts and stuff. I do want to shift gears really quick and talk about the marine, just because there is a little bit of a marine threat here now, and so we'll kind of start here. Let me close that for you. Uh, so overall, we are expecting some very solid to high-end small craft conditions setting up later today and tonight. Those winds are going to continue into tomorrow, and they'll start to decrease. There'll be a little bit of a surge actually behind the front on Thursday. The bay may go north at about, let's say, 15 to 20 knots with that front coming down later on Thursday. But for the most part, winds will be decreasing across most of the waters. As far as small craft advisory conditions, again, here on the left, their probabilities, that's a slam dunk, expecting some very solid to almost high end small craft advisory conditions. The one thing I wanted to highlight on this slide for our marine partners is the area in orange here. That's the probability of getting into maybe some gale force wind gust. And so offshore, once you get out past the wind farm, get out towards the canyons, you're definitely seeing a pretty good probability here where I think we will see gale force wind gust, maybe 34 to 36 knots for a time out here offshore. It's going to be more of a south wind, a southerly gale. And sometimes those are a little bit harder to get than a north gale, but I do think we'll see some of those winds getting close to 34 knots here offshore, especially the area that you see here in the orange. Once you get out, I'd say right around maybe 20 nautical miles and further out offshore is where those winds are going to be a little bit stronger. So this is just looking at our nearshore winds. Again, good, solid, high-end small craft with a lot of south winds gusting up to 25 to 30 knots starting later today and overnight tonight. And again, the winds let up a little bit here for Wednesday evening. It was around 15, 16 knots. But when that front comes through Thursday, notice how those winds, especially on the bay, jump back up to about 20 knots or so. So we're going to have small craft advisory conditions. They're already in effect really for this afternoon and this evening and overnight. Maybe a slight decrease in the wind here for late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. And when that front comes through, going to get a little bit surge of some air coming down from the north that might kick that small craft up again, especially for the bay there on Thursday. And then notice how the winds remain out of the northeast really all the way through Friday. They do get below small craft advisory conditions for the most part, but it's still going to be pretty rough. I mean, 2 to 3 foot on the bay, really all the way into Friday. And again, this is looking offshore. Again, the same story with maybe even some gale conditions starting to kind of show up in the forecast further offshore towards the canyons, getting those gusts getting closer to 35 knots. And this is just looking at your sustained wind versus your wind gust. And again, it kind of shows how you get that little bit of that slight lull in the wind there. Wednesday night picks back up Thursday with the front, and then you get that easterly wind persisting all the way through Friday, keeping the ocean kicked up. Probably a little bit a little bit of nautical conditions out there. It won't be too bad, but it's still a good east wind. So probably going to be about 5 to 6 feet in the ocean and probably still 2 to 3 feet, 3 feet on the bay. But the winds do decrease as we get into the weekend. The front does go offshore and kind of stall, and there's a little bit of a wave of low pressure along it, but that wave does not look very strong. So right now, over the weekend, the winds don't look too bad. I say 15 knots or less for the most part. And with that, we'll go ahead and stop the recording.